Right Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Baran Yadav, President of the Republic of Nepal. Chair of the inaugural session, Dr. Rabindra Shakya, Vice Chair of the National Planning Commission, Government of Nepal, and also the Chairperson of ICIMOD Board of Governors. Conference supporter, Mr. Roland, Streurer, Country Director of GIZ Nepal. Keynote speaker, Mr. Phrang, Chair of Northeast Slow Food and Agrobiodiversity Society. Dr. David Molden, Director General of ICIMOD. Dr. Eklabya Sharma, Director of Program Operations, ICIMOD. Dr. Dhrupad Choudhury, Conference Convenor and Regional Program Manager at ICIMOD. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, media friends, ICIMOD colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, ICIMOD, a very warm welcome to all. I'm Shakya, Private Sector Partnership Specialist at ICIMOD, and it's a great honor for me to serve as MC for this important event today. A mountain-specific consultation process for formulation of the post-2015 development agenda to address poverty and vulnerability in the Hindu Kush Himalayas. This, dear ladies and gentlemen, is the expected outcome of the International Conference on Addressing Poverty, Vulnerability in the Hindu Kush Himalayas, forging regional partnerships to enable transformative change. We are gathered here to attend the inaugural program, and thank you all for being a part of yet another important milestone in the service of ICIMOD for the mountain and people. We are truly privileged by the presence of so many eminent dignitaries here today for the inauguration of the International Conference. This conference, which is co-organized by the National Planning Commission of the Government of Nepal and supported by GIZ and Mountain Partnership Secretariat, is a collaborative initiative to bring together national, regional, and international experts and policymakers to compile updated knowledge on the contours of poverty and enablers of a sustainable development approach for the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. Needless to say, the conference also proposes to set the tone for forging and strengthening regional partnerships for sustainable mountain development. In addition to the significance of the international conference, we at ICIMOD are also very grateful to all for participating in one of our initial activities as we start our celebrations for 30 years on 5th December. Yes, 3 decades of dedication to the Himalayan region. We thank you all for being here. To begin the inaugural program, may I please request Dr. David Molden, Director General of ICIMOD, to deliver the welcome address.
Right Honorable Dr. Baran Yadav, President of Nepal, Dr. Rabindra Shakya, Vice Chair, National Planning Commission, also Board of Governors of ICIMOD, Ambassadors and Excellencies, Honorable Board Members of ICIMOD, dignitaries, ICIMOD, colleagues and friends, a very warm welcome here to ICIMOD on a beautiful day today. 30 years ago, the governments of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, Myanmar, India, Nepal, and Pakistan came together to create ICIMOD. So this week, actually, we're celebrating our 30th year anniversary, and this is part of that celebration. The government of Nepal and UNESCO played a key role in developing ICIMOD, and in 1983, by an act of parliament, ICIMOD was formed. The vision we have today is that men, women, and children of the Hindu Kush Himalaya enjoy improved well-being in a healthy mountain environment, or simply stated, as it says on our motto, for mountains and people. These days, the conference is very much focused on the people, addressing poverty and vulnerability in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. Given this background, given this history, it's entirely appropriate that we co-organize the event with the Planning Commission of Nepal. While we celebrate 30 years of ICIMOD, we are not at all pleased that poverty and vulnerability remain high, especially in mountain areas. We recognize that there are many challenges ahead, including high levels of poverty in the mountains. We recognize that even over our 30-year period at ICIMOD, the situation in mountains has changed very much. If we consider out-migration, globalization, urbanization, and climate change, indeed the situation is growing more complex, requiring all of us to put our minds together to solve this issue. I think it is important that all of us use an event like this to put our brains together, to put our hearts into it, to develop practical solutions on how to address this issue of poverty and vulnerability. So this conference not only will develop solutions, it will also help define the post-2015 development agenda to make sure that it is also relevant to mountains and people. Moreover, this conference will also help strengthen regional cooperation. We have participants from the Hindu Kush Himalayan region and indeed all over the globe coming together here to resolve one of the biggest challenges of our times. So in doing so, in putting this together, we would like to thank the Federal Republic of Germany, Mountain Partnership and World Bank, our core funders, including all of our 8 regional member countries, plus the governments of Austria, Norway, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. Let's make this conference a success. And let's also recognize what is success. It's not the last day walking out with some ideas. It's what we do with this conference after it's finished for mountains and people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Molden, for highlighting the importance of the conference. It is indeed an important day for us, and we take pride in our continual efforts with the cooperation from our partners and supporters. On behalf of ICIMOD and the supporters of the conference, may I please request Dr. Molden to kindly welcome the dignitaries with the scarf. Now I have the honor to invite Right Honorable Dr. Baran Yadav, President of Nepal, to please graciously inaugurate the conference by lighting the auspicious Panas of the Nepali lamps. May I please request Dr. Molden to kindly join the President. Dear ladies and gentlemen, may we have a big round of applause, please, as the conference inauguration ceremony is symbolically taking place. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to announce the opening of the conference on addressing poverty and vulnerability in the Hindu Kush Himalayas, forging regional partnerships to enable transformative change. Much to my delight, may I cordially invite Dr. Eklabya Sharma, Director of Program Operations at ICIMOD, to kindly share a few words about the conference.
Right Honorable President of Nepal, dignitaries on the dais, Excellencies, ICIMOD Board of Governors, participants of the conference, invitees, ladies and gentlemen. I am supposed to talk about the conference. Before doing that, let me start by raising some of the major issues on poverty that we face in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. People in the hills and mountains are poorer by about 5% than the whole country average in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. Determinants of poverty are different in mountains. We have lower access to basic amenities, poor physical access, higher dependency rates, and so many other factors. Drivers of change, including climate change, are impacting more on mountains. Out-migration, leaving women, children, and old, and giving more burdens to the women in the mountains. And there is a paradox that we have 4 of the global biodiversity hotspots, so much of water in the mountains and other natural resources, yet the people living in this Hindu Kush Himalayan region are very, very poor. We need to really look into this. Lastly, high impacts of change in mountains has increased vulnerability of people living in the mountains as well as in the downstreams. So this conference aims to address some of these issues in the next 4 days by crystallizing science-based evidence for policy planning and action, moving beyond pilots to scaling up, and fostering regional partnership to transformative change. Today, the inauguration session will be followed by a high-level policy panel on realizing the future we all want. Why is sustainable mountain development critical for national development agenda will be discussed by participants from the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. There are 2 policy panels planned for day 2 and day 3 dealing with topics such as translating science to policy and practice for reducing development disparities, defining the development enablers for the Hindu Kush Himalayan countries. Then we have a dialogue forum that will discuss whether business as usual or we change to inclusive business on a pivotal enabler, looking into engaging the private sector as responsible partners in inclusive development for the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. We also plan to have young professionals and institutions on day 4 interacting through poster sessions and marketplace. On day 2, we will devote defining the contours of sustainable mountain development agenda with 2 plenary sessions and 5 parallel sessions. 2 plenary sessions will deal with challenges of addressing poverty and vulnerability and effective targeting of poverty and vulnerability in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. The 5 parallel sessions will dwell on inclusive social development, labor migration and remittances, managing climate change, environmental sustainability, and inclusive economic development. The day 3 will dedicate on identifying the development enablers for the Himalayas, lessons from across the region. Here, 3 sessions will focus on what fosters community innovations, approaches for local levels and upscaling initiatives, insights from regional member countries of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. The last day, the 4th day, will have sneak preview of session where documentary on bridging information gap for improving services delivery at local levels will be shown. And the documentary is distributed to all of you in a pen drive, which you will get in the bag. And the concluding plenary session will have a discussion on drawing recommendations specifically on 2 topics. The first one on building consensus on the silent features of contours of post-2015 development agenda and defining the development enablers. The second session on concluding the recommendations will focus on towards the future we want in the Hindu Kush Himalayas, strengthening partnership and regional cooperation for enabling transformative change of the mountain people in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. The expected output from these conferences, we think that we will have recommendations. We will have daily updates in the form of evening bulletins and videos. Then there will be a conference report and we also foresee publication of a selection of papers in a special issue of a peer-reviewed journal. The outcomes, we foresee two. One is outcome of document as a specific mountain-related inputs for the consultation process for formulation of the post-2015 development agenda, and formation of a forum for addressing poverty and vulnerability in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. More than 200 participants from 19 countries are attending this conference. We hope the conference will provide opportunities for fruitful discussions and drawing future agenda for reducing poverty and addressing vulnerability of people in mountains as well as downstreams. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharma, for the information on the conference and for stressing the importance of forging regional partnership to enable change in the region. Now I would like to welcome Mr. Roland Streurer, Country Director of GIZ Nepal, and the support of the conference to kindly deliver his remarks.
Right Honorable President of Nepal, distinguished members of the podium, honorable board members of ICIMOD, excellencies, colleagues, friends, participants. For me, it's a great, great honor and also pleasure to address to you in the inauguration of this conference on behalf of the supporters to this conference. The supporters to this conference are on the one side the general 8-member countries of ICIMOD, but also Switzerland, Norway, Austria, and United Kingdom. On the other side, there is a contribution from the Mountain Partnership Secretariat, and this secretariat is hosted by the FAO, with special contributions by the countries of Italy, Switzerland, and also the FAO and the World Bank. Additionally, it gives me great pleasure and proud also to announce that the German government is contributing to this conference through its Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development via GIZ here in Nepal, and we is another stone in the mosaic of our contribution to the country, but also to ICIMOD, where we cooperate since many, many years. Why, you would ask, are we supporting this kind of event? It's not because David asked us, but there's more motivation behind, because we all, as development partners, do have a mandate. And in relation to the objectives of this conference, we have a mandate to act, and to act now. Addressing poverty and vulnerability means, at the end, adaptation at various levels, but also we do have to follow this adaptation strategy in our organizations in order to enhance the adaptation strategies of the communities in the mountains. We have to reconsider. That means adapt also our support strategies. We have to reduce the risk of life of the communities in the mountains. And the more we learn from this conference, the better we can also implement our adaptation strategies. Therefore, the conference comes at the right time. Let me mention only two factors important in that discussion in the next following days from our point of view. First of all, cross-border approaches. It's not anymore necessary to be on a country level. No, in this different factors contributing to the poverty and the vulnerability of this region, we need cross-border approaches. For this, we need first common objectives, and we hope we reach this during this week. Only with common objectives you can coordinate, and only after coordination you can cooperate. In this regard, ICIMOD is on the right track in promoting regional cross-border programs. And so, but it's not enough, we have to do even more, and hopefully some new initiatives come out from this conference. Mention only the subject water. 80% of the world's fresh water comes from the mountains. Drinking, irrigation for food security, for the industry. This is a wealth the mountains have, which has to be protected. You know, and I won't preach to the believers, climatic change, deforestation, rainfall patterns changing, glaciers melting, yeah, these all will have extreme applications on the population of these areas. Not only for the upstream, but also for the downstream communities. You remember the recent disasters we had here in the regions. So therefore, policies have to be addressed across the borders. Second, it's not only international, it's also multidimensional. Recently we discussed a lot the nexus between the water, energy, and food security. Another factor, 25% of the population of India, China, parts of South Asia, Pakistan, they are dependent on the water of the Himalaya and Hindu Kush. 20% of the global electricity comes from hydropower. Only these facts and the slightest changes in water availability and in water quality will result in heavy chain reactions. Therefore, adaptation is the call of the day at all levels, at policy level, at financial levels, as for global development partners, the private sector, scientists, communities, down to the individual. I'm sure this conference will contribute to the adequate change processes. Therefore, we support this initiative and we are looking forward, contribute on the one side to the results of and the recommendations of this conference, but also then contribute to the implementation, to the practical execution of these adaptation strategies. Thank you, ICIMOD, for this remarkable initiative. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Phrang, who is a mountain man from Meghalaya, India, and who has worked in IFAD Rome for more than 25 years. It is my pleasure now to invite Mr. Phrang, Chair of the Northeast Slow Food and Agrobiodiversity Society in India, and also the Coordinator of Indigenous Partnership for Agrobiodiversity and Food Sovereignty, to please address the inaugural session as the keynote speaker.
Right Honorable President Dr. Baran Yadav, Honorable Dr. Rabindra Shakya, Vice Chair of the National Planning Commission, the board members of ICIMOD and the support group, Dr. David Molden, the Director General of ICIMOD, Mr. Roland Streurer, my long-lost friend and Country Director of GIZ, the former Director Generals of ICIMOD, Dr. Gabriel Gamble and Andreas Schild, Dr. Dhrupad Choudhury, my many friends here and colleagues and excellencies. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share with you a few thoughts on the topic, realizing the future we want. Why should addressing poverty and vulnerability in the Hindu Kush Himalayas matter for global sustainable development? I must confess that I'm humbled, but I'm honored by being invited to speak at this opening session of this international conference, especially in the presence of the President of Nepal. In 2007, the fourth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, IPCC, stated that the Himalayan glaciers, the largest body of ice outside the polar caps, and the source of water for about 500 million people in the Gangetic Basin alone, could disappear by 2035 if the Earth keeps warming at the current rate. The report was heavily criticized for its projected time scale. IPCC, some may say, may have got its mathematics wrong. However, the IPCC was very right to highlight highlight the threat to the Himalayan glaciers and the Himalayan ecosystem, a threat that we must all address locally, nationally, and internationally. The annual glacial melt from the Himalayas provides as much as 70% of the summer flow of the river Ganges and about 50 to 60% of the summer flow of the other great rivers of Asia. And that's a fact that Roland had mentioned just now and which all of us know. These rivers, however, are the homes of millions of the poor and the marginalized. A glacial retreat in the Himalayas will have a particularly disastrous impact on the poor and the vulnerable communities living along these rivers and in the Himalayas. I vividly remember the tropical cyclone on the 29th of April 1991 that hit the Chittagong district of Bangladesh and killed more than 138,000 people. I was then asked by IFAD to be part of a team tasked with developing a quick recovery and rehabilitation project for the ravaged areas of Kutubdia, Mahashkali, and Chittagong. We found during the field visit that most of the people who died and those who survived the disaster and were displaced were landless. These landless people, both the living and the dead, were pushed through lack of resources to these cyclone-prone areas, where they were forced to cut the mangrove swarms as their only source of fuelwood. In June this year, the people of the Indian Himalayan state of Uttarakhand suffered one of the worst devastations in their living memory, when cloudbursts, flash floods, and landslides killed more than 1,000 people, 200,000 animals, and destroyed properties worth $4.8 billion. The monsoon floods of Pakistan in 2012 were even worse, as they killed more than 2,000 people, displaced millions, submerged about 1/5 of Pakistan underwater, and left in their wake damages of worth more than $43 billion US. If the Bangladesh experience is any indication, I am sure that the worst sufferers of Pakistan and Uttarakhand floods were the vulnerable people forced to live at the margins of society. The severe impact of global warming and our technical solutions have, of course, always grabbed the attention and the headlines of media. Unfortunately, the socio-economic challenges of climate change, which expose the marginal to greater vulnerabilities and which actually create conflicts and weaken macroeconomic performance, seldom hit the headline news. I hope that this conference will embolden all of us and ICIMOD and its members to acknowledge that the technocratic fixes, important as they are not enough to address the vulnerability of the poor in an era of increasing climate change challenges. One daunting poverty and vulnerability problem for the Himalayan region is the unequal access to resources between communities and within communities. In his recent book, The Price of Inequality, Joseph Stiglitz, formerly of the World Bank, reminds us that the Great Depression in the US was preceded by a steady increase in social inequality. We in the Himalayan areas must try to avoid such a situation. Inequality leads to a less efficient and a less productive economy. Stiglitz also said that the greater the disparity of wealth within a nation or a community, the more reluctant the wealthy are to spend money for the common good. He further states that whenever we obstruct equal opportunity, we are not using one of our most valuable assets, the assets of our people and the social capital, in the most productive way. Inequality therefore fuels exclusion mechanisms that the powerful manipulate to the detriment of the marginalized. We need to find ways to overcome inequality so that people can improve their livelihoods and enhance their well-being and happiness. But we also need to find ways to overcome inequality so that our economies can grow more sustainably. One of the clearest examples of unequal access to resources and lack of power is found in the position of women in the Himalayan communities. I come from a matrilineal society where the children belong to the mother's clan, where the youngest daughter inherits the property of the family, and where the man, on getting married, moves to the wife's family house. Women amongst our tribe certainly has a much better social and economic status. However, even in such a society, women are not allowed to sit in the darbar, the village governing bodies. Women are vulnerable. Women have unequal access to resources and power. But let us not forget that they will be the ones who will be at the front line of any climate change adaptation or changes that are coming in these areas. With more and more men in many poor households out-migrating for better incomes, the feminization of labor force in many Himalayan countries will become even more pronounced. We therefore need to encourage and empower women to generate ideas and direct changes required for a sustainable future that we all want. Having worked for more than 20 years in IFAD, an UN organization that has dedicated a significant percentage of its resources to women, the rural poor, and the marginalized, I have seen, as we say with my own eyes, the agency and the transformational role of women when given the opportunity to play a leadership role. Another area that has gone unreported until recently is the threat to the rich biodiversity of the Himalayan area. The role of biodiversity in rural livelihood strategies is not always considered an important factor in many development planning schemes. But biodiversity in the Himalayan region is both highly diverse and of great importance to the livelihoods and local economies of rural communities. In the face of climate change, rural communities need some assurance of the future functioning and sustainability of their traditional livelihoods and the ecosystem services that they have managed for generations. Our development initiatives and those of our partners must address this concern. However, it has been found that some of our development activities are not always compatible with the protection of this diversity. Let this conference therefore emphasize a new and novel process of inquiry that recognizes vulnerable people as knowledge holders, as change agents and co-creators of innovation, and not mere recipients of our technical assistance, of our loans, and of our grants. Let us open our eyes to the reality of this human agency of the vulnerable, and to the fact that some communities are already adapting and building the resilience for a modern world in front of them. For example, water conservation is going to become a major concern in the coming years. Yet some of the water management practices of local communities are extremely effective and extremely creative and innovative. And yet we have forgotten them. Maybe it's time for us to turn back and look back at our traditional systems and see what is there that is in store for us as solutions for the future. But if the poor, the powerless, and the marginalized communities and women are to be valued as equal partners for building the resilience of the Himalayan region and therefore of the world, then we need to have the courage to campaign for a new political process of participatory democracy that will promote multi-actor partnership, that will enable wider ownership of decisions, of processes, and of projects, and of accountability that will enable all partners to hold institutions, professionals, policymakers, and civil servants answerable to local communities for their acts of commission and omission. I commend ICIMOD, its current director, Dr. David Molden, and all the previous directors general for their commitment to tell the world that the vulnerability of the poor of this region must be addressed locally, nationally, and internationally if the world is to achieve the future we want to realize. I wish Dr. Molden and his staff the very best as we strive to build and expand the capacity of all for a meaningful and inclusive and sustainable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roy. We are grateful to you for your presence here with us and for reassuring us of the importance of the region in the global context. It gives me great pleasure to invite the chair of the inaugural session, Dr. Rabindra Shakya, Vice Chair of the National Planning Commission of the Government of Nepal and also the Chairperson of ICIMOD Board of Governors, to please present his remarks.
Chief Guest, Right Honorable Dr. Baran Yadav, President of Nepal, Honorable members of the ICIMOD Board of Governors, Dr. David Molden, Director General, ICIMOD, Mr. Roland, Streurer, Country Director, GIZ, Key Speaker, Mr. Phrang, Excellencies, media representatives, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Right at the outset, I would like to welcome you all and express my sincere thanks for your presence here this afternoon. National Planning Commission, Government of Nepal is extremely very happy to co-host this event in collaboration with ICIMOD on such an important theme which falls within the priority areas of Nepal's current 13th Plan Approach Paper. Hence, we regard that the event is both timely and relevant. Further, this event, we view at it as the continuation of the efforts on the part of ICIMOD to come up with policies to address the issue of poverty and vulnerability among the mountainous people of Hindu-Kush region. Poverty and vulnerability of the people in the mountain region of Nepal continues to remain a national concern. Nepal's poverty estimate is still very high. Around 1,250,000 households, or about 7 million people, are still living below the estimated national poverty line. Mountain people is equally vulnerable to all economic consequences arising out of natural disasters. However, Nepal has taken and is still taking all the policy measures and programs within its capacity to address these issues through the establishment of Poverty Alleviation Fund, the introduction of National Development Services, pursuance of inclusive economic development policy, the implementation of targeted programs, and so on, to mention just a few. But we still feel that more policy efforts are needed to tackle the problem of poverty and vulnerability. Hopefully, deliberations during the conference will lead to the identification of appropriate tools and policy options for addressing poverty and vulnerability issues, thereby enhancing sustainable development of mountain regions in Nepal and elsewhere in the Hindu Kush region. Further, the conference, we believe, will also contribute to the national efforts in the preparation of the national submission to the United Nations for defining the post-2015 development agenda, where we expect mountain issues to feature as one of the central concerns of development agenda. Any definition of sustainable development agenda, we believe, will remain incomplete without due reference to the Sustainable Mountain Development Agenda. It's a well-known fact that poverty problem has many dimensions. The underlying drivers of poverty are also equally diverse. For rapidly reducing poverty and vulnerability in the Hindu Kush region, we need to identify the co-determinants of poverty in the region and design and implement effective policy measures to address the same. I'm confident that the deliberation in the next few days will further provide us with insights about the nature of mountain poverty and potential policies to alleviate all dimensions of poverty for the Hindu Kush region. We are also aware of the fact that our vision to enable Nepal to graduate from the list of a LDC to that of a developing country status by 2022 is difficult to achieve without inclusive development of the mountainous region. We also feel that an accelerated and coordinated approach at the regional level is very useful to tackle all forms of poverty, vulnerability, and deprivations, especially in the mountain areas. This conference, we believe, will contribute to the identification of innovative ideas in these areas for the consideration of member states of ICIMOD. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express our deep gratitude to the Right Honorable the President for his presence here today. Equally, I would like also to take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to our co-host, the ICIMOD, for jointly organizing this important and timely event. I'm sure our deliberations will be productive and useful in our attempt towards achieving vulnerability and poverty-free mountain communities in the Hindu Kush region. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shakya, for your remarks and for enlightening us of the significance of the work that needs to be continued in the region. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor once again to request Right Honorable Dr. Baran Yadav, President of the Republic of Nepal, to please deliver a speech as the chief guest of this inauguration ceremony.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to inaugurate International Conference on addressing the poverty and vulnerability in the Hindu Kush Himalayas. I feel delighted to be amongst of this august gathering. I would like to congratulate the National Planning Commission of Nepal and ICIMOD for jointly organizing this vital conference on a topic which is central to the well-being of the mountain people, especially those in Nepal and the other countries of the Himalayan region. The Himalayan region is rich in biodiversity and traditional knowledge, but unfortunately, the region is also the place of extreme poverty and deprivation. The challenge of climate change further increases the burden for mountain people. Several studies, including some by ICIMOD, have shown that the climate change trends are faster in the mountain than in the plain areas. The mountain people are traditionally very hard-working, resilient, and adaptive. But the place at which the climate is reported to be changing makes it difficult to cope with and sometimes put the mountain communities at a serious disadvantage. This, as I understand, also constrains the achievement of the MDGs, and I hope there will be discussions during the conference in this regard. ICIMOD, being based in Kathmandu, puts the government of Nepal also in a very advantageous position. The research studies and knowledge generated by ICIMOD gives the government of Nepal and other Himalayan countries evidence-based knowledge to initiate correct action and also to pursue the agenda of sustainable mountain development at the global forum. As we know, Nepal, with the successful completion of the general election for Nepal Constituent Assembly, is entering into a new era of peace and development. The government of Nepal is fully aware of the fact that the mountains are global assets. Mountain environmental and development issues are transboundary in nature. No country alone, therefore, can solve the problems, and this needs regional cooperation and international support raised. I hope that Nepal, through our National Planning Commission and other agencies, takes an active role in the post-2015 development agenda formulation process and provide leadership for the other countries in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. In these efforts, I look on ICIMOD to provide the required support as a regional knowledge center and an active partner in taking this important initiative forward. I am confident that this conference will not only discuss the issue for addressing poverty and vulnerability, but also the issue related to the regional cooperation among the countries in this region. I am happy to see that a large number of international and national experts, as I have come to know, and the scientists, researchers, and senior government officers and representatives from different mountain regions of the world and the international and regional development agencies are attending this conference. Your thoughts and ideas will contribute to find ways and means to address the challenges being faced by the mountain region of the world, particularly developing countries. You are aware that the climate reported to be changing makes mountain communities hard in their livelihood. This may affect to achieve the Millennium Development Goals stipulated for Nepal and the other mountain countries. So the conference will focus on this issue and share some of our success stories as well. In the last, I wish a grand success of this conference and hope for a pleasant stay of international delegates in our beautiful country. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable President, for your important address as a chief guest today. With Nepal as a regional member country of ICIMOD, we are privileged to have and continue to enjoy encouraging partnership with the government of Nepal. With your presence here today, we are confident that the partnership will strengthen further in meeting the joint objectives for sustainable mountain development. May I now call upon Dr. Dhrupad Choudhury, Conference Convenor and Regional Program Manager at ICIMOD, to please present the vote of thanks.
Right Honorable Dr. Baran Yadav, President of Nepal, dignitaries on the dais, members of ICIMOD's Board of Governors, ambassadors and excellencies of the Diplomatic Corps, other dignitaries, chairs, keynote speakers, participants to the conference, my ICIMOD colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the conference organizers and ICIMOD. When we started, we were ambitious and we took up this challenge of organizing the international conference. We wanted to make this event a conference that sets the tone for the consultation process for developing the post-2015 development agenda and sustainable development goals formulation process for mountain regions and in particular the Hindu Kush Himalayan countries. As the conference program reflects, we have, I dare say so, been successful in bringing together a host of experts both from the scientific world, practitioners, as well as policymakers, and also the media. Many individuals and institutions have contributed to shape the conference structure, and it would be difficult on my part to name each one of them. However, I would like to extend our gratitude and record our appreciation to those who have been prominent in this regard. The first, to the Right Honorable Dr. Baran Yadav, our sincere thanks. Despite the tremendous demand on his time at this critical juncture of Nepal's history, he has been kind enough to accept our invitation and to grace this occasion as the chief guest to inaugurate the conference. Sir, we deeply appreciate this gesture. To the conference supporters, in particular our core donors and the government of Germany through GIZ, the Mountain Partnership Secretariat, a heartfelt thank you to you for your support and also the confidence in our work. To Phrang Roy, our sincere thanks for accepting our invitation to deliver not just the keynote address at a very short notice, but also as the keynote in one of our sessions. Phrang, we thank you very much. We appreciate and value your gesture. Dr. Shakya, Vice Chair of the National Planning Commission, sir, we sincerely value your ready acceptance to co-organize this event. We deeply appreciate this support from the government of Nepal. We would like to thank the government of Nepal through you, sir. To participants, chairs, and speakers of the different sessions, a big thank you. Without your support, the conference wouldn't have come up to this shape and the stage that we are in. Thank you all. I look forward to the rich deliberations and your valuable contributions in making the conference a success. Last but not the least, I have to thank the invisible team, my colleagues, the soldiers who have been with me to bring the conference to this stage. A big thank you for your tireless efforts.